Thursday. It turns out the little place we stopped for the night was a public park. Little League practice started first thing in the morning, and we were parked right over the bridge's mound. Song. Whiz. Smack. Luckily, we were able to take off before some kid broke a taillight with a line drive. Mom said she didn't want to repeat of yesterday and asked everyone to think of something we could do that was guaranteed fun. And that's when I remembered the billboard I saw the day before. The billboard was for this place called the Family Adventure Center. Usually, whenever the word family is part of something, it's a warning to stay away. But the pictures on the sign made me think this place could be different. Family Adventure Center. We had to backtrack about 2 hours to find the Adventure Center, but it didn't really matter since we weren't really headed anywhere to begin with. I have to say, this place was pretty cool. There were a million activities and I wanted to do them all. But everything had an age and height requirement, and Manny wasn't tall enough to do any good activities. Mountain Bear says, "You must be this tall to ride." The only activity Manny was big enough for was the fun float, where you drifted down the river in inner tubes. So that's what Mom signed us up for. Tubing Center. Inner tube rentals. I really wanted to do something more exciting, like rock climbing, but Mom was dead set on us all doing something as a family. Mom said the fun float would be relaxing, and after we put on our life jackets, we grabbed a cooler and a few other things from the camper to take with us on the river. Row, row. After our experience with the fish farm yesterday, I wasn't crazy about getting into the water again, but there were a bunch of other people doing the fun float too, and I figured if there were any piranhas in the river, they'd go for them before they'd go for me. I have to admit that once we got going, it was kind of relaxing. Maybe even a little too relaxing. Roderick fell asleep while Dad answered work emails and Mom checked in with Manny's pediatrician. His stool seemed a little runny. Should I add more fiber to his diet? So no one was really paying attention when we hit a shallow part in the river and came to a complete stop. We had to take our tubes out of the water, and it wasn't fun walking across a bunch of sharp rocks in our bare feet. Once the river got deeper, we put the tubes back in the water, but my inner tube must have got punctured in the shallow part because it was losing air. So I took Manny's tube and we emptied the ice out of the cooler so he could use that. Glug, glug. I thought the trip was gonna take 20 minutes, but it had already been 2 hours with no end in sight. And we really slowed it down when we got stuck behind a big group of people jamming up the river. I hit the warm spots in the water, and I've been in enough baby pools to know what that meant. So when the river got wider, I paddled my tube around those guys to try and get out of their wake. Splish, splosh. Unfortunately, I went a little too far and ended up in a part of the river where the water was really rough. And a few seconds later, I got tossed from my inner tube. It was actually pretty scary. The water was moving fast, so I pointed my feet downstream to make sure I didn't crack my head open on a rock. I called out for help, but the people around me had the music up too loud to even notice. Help! My family tried to save me, but it turns out they're totally useless in an emergency. Bonk. Up ahead, people were pulling their inner tubes out of the river in the landing area, so I tried to paddle myself over there. But the water was moving too fast, and I was getting pulled downstream. My family got out of the river, and Dad was yelling and pointing at something near me. That's when I saw a big branch hanging out over the water, and I grabbed it. For a second, I thought everything was going to be okay. Then I noticed something drifting away from me and realized it was my bathing suit. A lifeguard from the adventure center started wading out after me with a life preserver, and I knew if I just kept hanging onto that branch, she'd rescue me. But all I could think of were the people in my landing area who were about to see me without my bathing suit, and Roderick was already recording me with his phone. So I decided the best move was to let go and take my chances. Luckily, the water wasn't as rocky downstream, but it was still moving fast. By the time I was able to drag myself onto the shore, I must have been a quarter of a mile from the landing area, and I never did find my bathing suit, but thankfully I found a cooler.